What happens when a kingdom powerful enough to rival empires vanishes from the world's memory, not in a single cataclysmic moment, but in a slow, almost gentle forgetting, as though the earth itself inhales and the walls, markets, songs, and prayers dissolve into dust? Picture the northern horn of Africa in the 6th century. Incense coils above the stone towers of Aksum. The salt wind off the Red Sea carries frankincense, ivory, and the murmured Greek of traders from Byzantium. Gold coins bearing the cross and the king's profile pass from palm to palm, and every clang of the mint is a heartbeat that says, "We endure." Yet within 200 years, the harbor of Adulis is silt and silence. The great obelisks stand like orphaned sentinels, and the mint's hammer has cooled forever. The kingdom did not fall to a single sword thrust. It starved when trade routes shifted, bled when Beja nomads harried its frontiers, and finally staggered southward as the soil itself thinned beneath the plow. Aksum survives only in the prayers of monks at Mariam Sion and in the bewildered questions of later chroniclers. How does a realm once feared by Persian satraps simply recede like an ebbing tide? Travel now, in the mind's eye, 6 centuries backwards along the Nile to the Kingdom of Kush at Kerma, and later Napata and Meroë. The sun at the Second Cataract is a white disk that seems to burn through the papyrus. Here, the kings ride southward after Egypt's new kingdom falters, wearing the double crown and wielding the Kapesh sickle sword once borne by pharaohs. For 800 years, Kush ruled from the Mediterranean haze to the Ethiopian highlands, its iron furnaces glowing like constellations along the riverbanks, its queens, Kandake Amanirenas, Amanishaketo, sending armies against Rome itself. Yet the world remembers only Egypt's pyramids, never the smaller but steeper royal tombs at Meroë, ringed by golden sand. Kush begins to slip when Rome redirects trade to Berenike on the Red Sea. The caravans that once brought ostrich feathers and ebony to Napata now skirt eastward. Aksumite spearmen, heirs to the very highlands Kush once taxed, sack Meroë around 350 CE, and the last Kandake disappears into legend. Wind scours her name from the monuments. The Nile shifts course. Kush becomes a footnote in Herodotus. Shift southwestward across the Sahel grasslands until the air itself smells of dust and gold. Here, between the Sahara's breath and the Niger's bend, flourished Wagadu, known to Arab scribes as Ghana, land of gold. In the 10th century, the court at Kumbi Saleh dazzled outsiders. The king of Ghana sat beneath a gold parasol, flanked by tethered horses caparisoned in silk, while the clink of glass weights measured nuggets from bambouk and bourrée. The Sonenke griots sang that Bida, the sacred serpent of Wagadu, had promised unending wealth so long as a maiden was offered to him each year. One season, the maiden, Sia Yatabare, was saved by her lover. Bida's dying curse was drought. The tale is a legend, but the truth behind it is harsher. Almoravid Berbers, zealous in newfound Islamic fervor, rode south in 1076 CE, their camel hooves drumming like war drums on the Sahel. Wagadu's iron-tipped spears broke against Berber swords, trade routes tilted toward the Senegal Valley, and the desert's dunes marched southward. By the time the Mali Empire rose at Niani, the name Wagadu was already drifting into the realm of children's stories. Further east along the Niger, Songhai inherited the river's traffic and the salt slabs of Tagaza. Picture Gao in the early 14th century. Muezzins call from the mud-brick minaret of the Sankore Mosque, while fleets of riverboats unload rock salt blocks that gleam like crystal in the moonlight. Askia Muhammad Touré, soldier caliph, fashions a bureaucracy of qadis and provincial governors. The University of Timbuktu gathers manuscripts bound in gazelle-skin. But the river that once carried gold to the Mediterranean also carries gunpowder dreams. In 1591, 3,000 Moroccan arquebusiers under Judar Pasha ford the Sahara, their muskets coughing smoke and lead. The Songhai cavalry, armored in quilted cotton, shatters against volley fire. The Battle of Tondibi lasts one day and echoes for centuries. Gao burns, libraries drown in the Niger's brown flood, and Timbuktu's scholars sell their books for salt. The empire fractures into a mosaic of Tuareg raids and Hausa city-states. The river keeps flowing, indifferent. Turn south again to the plateau between the Zambezi and Limpopo rivers, where granite boulders balance like the toys of forgotten giants. Great Zimbabwe rises in the 13th century, conical towers of dressed stone without mortar, enclosing courts where goldsmiths smelt ore from the nearby hills and ivory carvers shaped tusks into coiled serpents. The Razwi rulers, claiming divine right from the lightning bird, levied tribute on Swahili merchants who sailed the monsoon winds from Kilwa. Glass beads from India mingle with copper ingots, and the Shona language sings of Dziva Guru, the rain god who dwells in the Matopo caves. But the land itself begins to withdraw its favor. Decades of overgrazing and shifting rainfall thin the grass, cattle grow lean, and the gold seams that once glittered like fireflies in the rock run out. By 1450, the royal court abandoned the stone city, drifting northward to establish the Mutapa kingdom. Portuguese chroniclers arrive a century later and, unwilling to credit African architects, insist the ruins must be Ophir, the city of Solomon's mines. The stones remain, warm to the touch at sunset, but no voice calls them home. Far to the west in the forests that steam beneath equatorial rains lay the Kingdom of Benin, which Atara Oba Eware the Great planted Iroku trees along the city's avenues, ordered the digging of moats 30 feet deep, and received Portuguese emissaries with their fire-spitting tubes. For 2 centuries, Benin balanced diplomacy and war, selling pepper, leopard skins, and eventually captives to European ships whose holds stink of fear. But the trade that once enriched the court began to hollow it from within. By the 19th century, the Obas were pawns of rival chiefs who sold their own people to keep pace with the insatiable Atlantic market. In 1897, a British punitive expedition marches inland, artillery against bronze-tipped spears. The royal palace burns for days. Bronzes are shipped to London, labeled war booty, and Benin is absorbed into the protectorate of southern Nigeria. The carver's descendants still work in secret, but the kingdom's heartbeat is stilled. Travel now to the southern fringe of the Sahara, where the Kanem-Bornu Empire endures for nearly a millennium beside Lake Chad. Imagine the Sahel at dawn. Reed boats glide through papyrus, fishermen cast nets woven from palm fiber, and the court at Ngarzagamu, its clay walls stretching 6 miles, awakens to the bleating of royal camels. The Saifawa dynasty traces its lineage to Yemen. Mai Dunama Dabalemi in the 13th century commands 40,000 cavalry and plants the empire's flag on the pilgrimage route to Mecca. Yet the empire's fate is bound to the lake's mercurial moods. Drought shrinks Lake Chad, pasture turns to dust, and Tuareg raiders gallop out of the Tenere like sandstorms with iron hooves. In the 19th century, Umar of Bornu raised the last great army, but it was shattered by the Sudanese warlord Rabi az-Zubair's musket-armed columns. The ancient capital is abandoned, reeds overgrow the palace walls, and the Saifawa dynasty scatters into village memory. Farther south yet, in the heart of the Congo Basin, the Kingdom of Kongo once stretched from the Atlantic surf to the Kwango Rapids. In 1991, Nzinga Nkukwu receives Portuguese missionaries at Mbanza, Congo, is baptized Zhao I, and watches as stone churches rise beside traditional Nkisi shrines. For a century, Congo was a Catholic kingdom on African soil. its nobles fluent in Congo and Portuguese, its trade in copper and ivory balanced against the slow hemorrhage of captives. Alfonso I writes desperate letters to Lisbon, pleading that the slave trade be curbed, but the letters are carried on the same ships that pack human cargo. Civil wars erupt. The Manicongo's authority fragments among provincial dukes. In 1665, the Battle of Mbwila saw Portuguese muskets cut down the last centralized Congo army. The crown passed to pretenders sustained by foreign guns. By the 19th century, Mbanza, Congo was a village of ruins where children played among broken crucifixes, and the kingdom survived only in the rhythm of funeral drums that the Atlantic trade could never still. These are 8 nations, 8 vast breaths of history that once warmed the continent. These are 8 nations, 8 vast breaths of history that once warmed the continent and then cooled into silence. Yet the silence is never complete. Somewhere in the Sahel, a child still hears the story of Wagadu's serpent. A fisherman on Lake Chad sings of Mai Dunama's cavalry. A stonemason near Masvingo runs his fingers along granite and feels the ghost weight of great Zimbabwe's towers. Empires fall not because a single gate is breached, but because the 1,000 invisible threads, trade winds, rainfall, soil, belief, the loyalties of a cousin to a cousin, begin to unravel. When the last thread snaps, memory itself is left hanging. And so we are left with questions that echo louder than answers. How many more marketplaces lie beneath the acacia roots? How many more royal tombs wait beneath sand that a shepherd's staff could disturb? Somewhere under the red earth of Mali, the ink of lost manuscripts still clings to parchment. Somewhere beneath the asphalt of Lagos, the brass rings of Benin's palace lie curled like sleeping snakes. The continent keeps its secrets close, as if to remind us that every map is only a photograph of forgetting. If the stories of these 8 vanished nations have stirred you, if you feel the tug of questions that refuse neat endings, then walk with us further off the map. Subscribe to History Off the Map. Like the video, share your own family's whispers of lost kingdoms in the comments, and ring the bell so the next time the earth exhales and reveals a shard of pottery, a carved tusk, a line of forgotten script, you will hear the echo first. The past is never truly gone, it only waits for someone willing to listen.